welcome. I'm James O'Loughlin. How many days have you gone in your life without eating food? Probably none. It's essential. It's fuel. It's delicious, or sometimes horrible. It's good for you, or sometimes it's ice cream with caramel sauce. We crave it, we stuff it in, and increasingly we watch people mucking about with it on TV. Tonight, 3 inventions from the wonderful world of food. Ian Scott loves oysters. He loves them. He's loved them for 78 years, and he wanted to create a new way of opening them. Trevor Watson was sitting outside at a cafe in Caloundra trying to stop his table wobbling when he realised that in the digital age, a bit of cardboard under one leg didn't really cut it. And Thomas Perzakowski likes coffee, but he hates noise. He wanted to find out if there was a quiet way to get his daily brew. Now to welcome our panel, we have designer Alison Page and engineer James Bradfield Moody. Welcome. And our guest judge this week is a chef, TV presenter, author and now Tasmanian pig farmer. Please welcome Matthew Evans. Hey, Matthew. Now, food's as old as people, obviously older, but is innovation important in food?
I think innovation's always been there in food. I mean, imagine we were always experimenting, we were always playing, but imagine the world without sponge cake or mayonnaise or hollandaise.
Because we don't think that, do we? We don't think that the first time a sponge cake was invented, it was an invention.
Yeah, someone had to think of whipping egg whites and you know, mixing it through and flour and putting it in an oven and baking it.
OK, give me an example of an inventive process or an invention in food that's blown your mind.
The thing that's come out in the last few years is a machine where you can pour hot custard into the top and instantly ice cream comes out the other side.
No.
No, seriously.
Really?
Yeah, it's about $15,000, but all the best restaurants have them now.
Really?
Yeah.
And does it work the other way too, ice cream to custard? Or not?
I think it's only one way.
Right.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you this, do you like oysters?
I love them, especially
you love
freshly
oysters.
opened.
Well, you will appreciate our first invention. It's good to have you here. Thanks. I, though, have never really understood people who like oysters. Slimy, squidgy things. They're almost like something you'd find up a giant's nose. But that's just me. Others not only love oysters, but they are inspired by them.
Well, would you believe it? The first oyster I ever had, I was 5 years old and I can still taste it now. I think it's the freshness and the saltiness from the seawater, and of course you can't beat a fresh oyster, which is one that you've just opened. It's a very risky, difficult thing to open an oyster because they are so firmly held together. I don't feel safe, I've got to tell you. And you've got to hold them in your hand and then you have a sharp, pointy knife and lever it open. That actually gives you the potential for stabbing yourself. No, I've never injured myself opening an oyster, but I know of a fellow who almost cut his finger off opening an oyster when we were on a cruise. Oh, Ian! And after that I thought, there's got to be a better, safer way to open these oysters, and from that moment it was born. Oysters come in all different shapes and sizes, and that is what makes it very difficult to find something that will accommodate those varying sizes and still function. And about 9 months later, after many, many failures, I came up with this thing.
Yes, and many good things take 9 months to make too. Please welcome Ian Scott.
We've been eating oysters for thousands of years. We've been farming them since the 1800s, but traditionally it's been a bit difficult to do, hasn't it?
Dangerous. It's more than difficult, yeah.
Well, let's see. Let's look at the traditional method. So I'm going to put on a glove here.
Yeah.
I'm going to grab one of these juicy oysters from the top there, and pretty much you've got to hold it very firmly down and then try to get that knife in between the edges.
Be careful.
Yeah. Whoa.
Oh, you're making me nervous.
Okay, I think I might stop there. I'm obviously not an expert at opening oysters.
That's right.
So what have you invented? This device here?
Yeah, this device here.
It's the oyster shucker holder?
It's the oyster shucker holder, which allows you to put an oyster there and firmly plant it sufficiently tight that you can get the oyster knife into it and open it.
And the first key is that you've actually got this guard here, which is probably very necessary to protect your hand.
Absolutely, as you just demonstrated.
Yep, and we put the oyster, and there's 3 points of contact 1, 2 and 3 here.
That's it.
And that holds the oyster nice and firmly. Now you do have 2 different sizes.
Yes.
You've got the one for regular oysters, and then you've got one that's for particularly big
Large
oysters
ones, correct.
at the end here. So you put them in, and then there's one other key to this, isn't there? There's a very strong
Spring
action down the bottom there, and that really wedges the oyster.
Yeah, and the spring back holds the oyster firmly in position.
Fantastic. Well, let me try now with a different oyster. Now I've got to get that little gap in the middle. That's much easier.
Put it down,
There we go.
lever it down.
There we go. You can see we've opened the oyster up.
Yeah.
Beautiful inside. Cut around the edge, don't you?
Yeah.
And then I love oysters too.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at opening them.
No, you cut that one. Well done.
Lovely.
Well, I'm really interested to see actually if he got any grit, because I mean, obviously the ultimate goal with shucking oysters is to retain as much of that natural juice as possible and no shell grit.
No grit, exactly.
So how does yours compare to doing it in the manual way? Is it much neater?
Definitely much neater, and it does sort of open it at the end, and any grit that is generated, and you can't help but generate a little bit of grit, because you're going in at the end, it falls away from the bottom.
Is it something that you possibly could look at maybe clamping to a work surface?
Yes, in fact, that's the 2 holes that are in there allow you to clamp it to the surface, and then you don't need to hold the holder itself. You've got 2 hands to open the
Yeah, I'd be
oyster.
willing to sacrifice some of my bench space for a permanent oyster shucker, I can tell you that. But what has been the response from, chefs? Because one of the things is about, the speed of opening. How long does it take to open, say, a dozen oysters?
Well, normally a professional shucker would open 400 an hour. This will open about 150 an hour. And if you've got a bottle of white wine, you don't want to open them any faster than, 150 an hour. You could be in trouble.
How do you go on your second bottle of white wine? I love oysters, and I open a lot of them. But have you tested this multiple times? Has it been tested over hundreds, or if not thousands of oysters?
Oh, yeah. We've, at this stage, sold over 600 of those in little old Adelaide. Wow. And we've exported to America.
Wow.
And Canada. Ask me how many? 2 in America and 1 in Canada.
Big numbers. You've got to start somewhere.
You started. That's a good thing.
Yeah, well, that's right.
You can't have a show these days on food without having a bit of a competition, so we've decided, guys, we're going to have a bit of a shuck-off. Ian, you're in control, you're the judge. Tell us where we want to go.
Okay, hang on, don't start. Yeah, just making sure it's fair.
I think you're cheating.
Have you locked them in?
Yep,
Okay,
yep.
hang on.
Yeah, and don't lift them. Hold down.
Yep.
Okay.
Go. Yeah, see, he lifted his.
I lifted mine.
Yeah, you lifted
Mine
yours.
too.
Keep at it, girl. You're going to win. You're going to win. You've won. You've won.
Fantastic. I'll go, Alison.
Yeah, she wins every time.
Yes.
Well, look, Ian, we're going to eat our oysters. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please thank Ian.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Well done.
Every year, the Australian National Science and Technology Centre, Questacon, invites inventive kids to an invention convention. But what do they do there?
Well, I'm Courtney.
My name's Curtis.
I'm Sky.
I'm Nicole.
My name's Vincent.
I'm Elizabeth. Well, my grandpa has motor neuron disease.
My invention is designed for teenagers.
It's a water safety GPS device
Basically for everyone that loves reading.
which locates people in stress.
It's designed for secondary school students. In the bath or in the ocean.
I'm not prepared to tell you anything.
Independence is a massive thing. It's basically a Perspex box.
People need to smile more and just realise they're beautiful just the way they are.
I'm a little bit concerned about people reading the future.
Well, it's going to replace barcodes.
You know, all these electronic gadgets.
It's an iPhone application.
I have like 3 or 4 more ideas which will change society in many ways.
Invention touches every industry there is.
I really am a smiley type person.
We just help them gain their independence back.
Even in the mornings, it's a curse.
Everyone can be an inventor. Yeah, even you.
It is irritating, isn't it, watching someone wobble? Wobbling is just inherently annoying. It should never have been invented, wobbling, but tragically it has been. I think wobbling is at its most irritating when it happens at a table that you're trying to sit at.
I did my trade as a boat builder. I did that for 9 years. I ended up in large format digital printing. I've always been very interested in design, and I decided to go and do more study in the field of AutoCAD and industrial design. I've been looking for a project, and here it is. Wobbly cafe tables. Either the customer or the staff have to get down on the ground. They have to mess around with the foot of the table. God knows whose feet's been on the foot of the table. You invariably end up with coffee in your saucer, or worse still, down the front of your shirt. Most cafe tables are supported on a single column. The thing about the column is it's hollow, so therefore I could bring a mechanism up through the column to stabilise the table.
He said a mechanism, but what sort of a mechanism? Please welcome Trevor Watson.
Hi, Trevor. There's 14,000 cafes and restaurants in Australia, and a lot of them have alfresco dining now. So, you know, this whole problem of sitting down at a cafe table and having that terrible wobble is just one of the most annoying problems, and is so common.
Yep.
But you've come up with a really nifty little mechanism.
Yeah, the reason I've come up with this idea is because it's away from the ground.
Yes.
You don't have to get down on the ground. You
So
don't
all
have
we-
to... Yeah.
All we really need to do is, there's an adjustment panel here. We just have to turn this a few times, sort of like winding a watch, really. It goes from being a wobbly table to a very
That was a long way out of the
stable way. And there's
Yeah.
another way of adjusting it as well, which is also adjusting it on the column here. And that's pretty much doing exactly the same thing.
Yep.
We've got one here, haven't we, Trevor? So you can actually see, here's the mechanism on the inside, and this is the bit that you're turning, and that connects down to the actual lever down the bottom of the leg here. And I think the key thing is to watch is what happens to the bottom of that leg as we turn that lever. You can see it's actually lifting, getting higher and higher as we go, and that's the thing that makes the table more stable.
I really love the adjustment at the table height. Is it an either-or thing, or
Yeah,
like...
it is. Like it comes as a standard with the adjustment in the column.
Yeah.
And my whole thinking there was that people could actually be sitting down and just reach under. There was you didn't have to get up and walk around or do anything. But this idea came along from cafes setting up in the morning, and it's an optional extra, where the staff could just stand and do it without having to bend over.
Yeah, it's perfect time to invent it, because about 15 years ago people would have used it as an ashtray.
Yeah.
But, what I'm interested in
5 years ago.
there's lots of outdoor dining, bit of dust,
Yeah.
and tables getting rained on. Is there any chance that the dust and dirt and water could go down through this section and affect the mechanism underneath?
Well, the mechanism is 304 stainless steel, so it really shouldn't affect it. But also the bottom of the column's hollow, so anything that does go in there will run straight out the bottom.
Right, okay.
And, I mean, being stainless and whatnot, you could always even put a hose in there if you wanted to clean out whatever you wanted to clean out. So.
And can you retrofit that, the engineering you've got through the middle of this table, could you retrofit it to existing tables, or do you have to buy a whole new base?
No, you have to buy a whole new base. You can reuse the tops again,
right,
because they fit our bases.
And have you talked to any cafes and restaurants, and
yeah, we've
what was
got
their response?
some in cafes, and they've been really positive about it. They really like them.
How much does it add to the cost of a standard table?
Probably, depending on what you'd call a standard table, but probably anywhere maybe $50. So if you're looking at a standard table, say 100, maybe 150.
Fantastic. Well, let's enjoy our nice level coffees. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks,
Thank
Trevor.
You.
Cheers, Trevor.
Thank you.
And now back to Questacon to see the great ideas being had by some great young minds.
I'm Sam.
I'm Jess.
I'm Madeline.
Hi, I'm Courtney.
I'm Emily.
I'm Thomas.
My name is Annie.
I've been working on my prototype for about 1.5 years now.
My invention is made for oceanographers.
My invention is cheaper than a car.
A lot of children do have to cross roads going to school.
Doesn't rely on fossil fuels.
It is an adjustable brace-like device.
It's a solar-powered tricycle.
It's a highly visible bag.
Developed for athletes.
It's fully functional and it works, and I've tested it and everything.
I hope to research on sharks and maybe see what they dislike and like.
Or we can even have a heat pack in it.
Therefore making life more enjoyable.
Technology is going to make farming a lot easier in the future.
Oh, we don't want to give too much away.
Yeah, we don't want to give too much away, so because we haven't got a pattern or anything.
Yeah.
Many people can't start their day without a coffee. They line up at the cafe looking mournful, impatient, edgy, grab it as soon as it's ready, and then after the first sip suddenly become calm, focused, normal people again, unless, of course, they accidentally get a decaf, in which case a look of horror crosses their face and they fall to the ground screaming, sobbing and renting their hair.
I used to do a lot of drawing. I still do. I've got piles of sketchbooks and I'm always doing little drawings. 6 or maybe 8 years ago, I started doing stencil art. I was always interested in design, so from a young age I used to pull things apart, but I never actually put them back together. When I began industrial design, I was really focused on furniture because it's something you interact with every day. And over the last year or so, I've been kind of stepping back for that. And I've been more interested in people and like solving problems. Because there's a lot of furniture out there, so it's nice to do something a little bit different. In my 4th year, we had to pick a final project, and one of those that was offered was something around coffee. I was originally presented with the idea to eliminate the noise when they were knocking out the waste from the portafilter, which is the device that filters the coffee as it goes into the glass. When I was looking at solving the issue of removing the waste without the noise, I found out that I could solve some other problems at the same time. Things like repetitive strain injury, damage to the portafilter unit itself. And when you have damage to the portafilter unit itself, you can do damage to the seal on the machine, and that could also add to degrading the quality of the coffee. When you're using the portafilter a couple of 100 times a day, it can really take a strain on your wrists. In the coffee industry, it's a lot of wrist movements. So anything you could do to reduce that is going to be a real benefit to the barista.
Please welcome, with his barista wrist movement reducing machine, Thomas Perzikowski.
So, Thomas, the noise has obviously driven you mad, and you've invented a machine to cope with that. But let's have a look at how you used to get rid of the coffee grounds until your machine was invented. Do you mind?
Here we go. Alison,
you
like whacking things, don't you?
I do love whacking things. It's how I express my arrogance, like other baristas.
Oh, good whacking.
Oh, and look at all that mess.
So she's made a mess and made a noise. Now, your invention, just talk me through it as I try to assemble it, is...
Okay, so first it's got a suction cup that attaches to the table, so you just lean it up against the table here like that.
Yep.
And you'll put the little... and you can turn it, and that'll lock it onto the table.
So that's locked onto the table. My little basket.
So you can bring that up and raise up from the bottom.
Yep.
And that locks into the unit.
Like magic, and a little hose that drops into the side.
Just like that.
Okay. No worries. And with this one, you've eliminated the noise.
Yes.
So less movement. Just pop it on there and...
Yep.
Voila.
Too easy.
Fantastic.
Wow.
Wow, that's amazing. So I guess what I'm really interested in, it gets rid of the noise of that, but it seems to create a little bit of a traffic hazard. Can you install this in the middle of the bench?
That's one thing I always thought about, that it'd be perfect to be installed ready for the barista. But the only reason I did like this is because you have a lot of different people working all the time. So one person might be shorter, one person might be taller, and they like to have it placed in different areas.
Yep.
So it's all about creating the environment that works best for each barista.
When you see a barista working in the morning and it's sort of like a dance, you know, they're making the coffee, they're frothing the milk, you know, they're flirting with the customers. And I'm worried...
Maybe with you.
I'm worried that, you know, sort of bashing and this movement, will this become part of that dance in the morning? Or
I'd like it to be.
Yeah,
I would.
It's possible it could be.
Will it actually affect the amount of time it takes to make a coffee? Because speed is of the essence in a cafe.
Oh, definitely. Well, as you saw there, it takes just about the same time as it does to knock it out.
Yeah, and I can imagine there's also the big benefits around occupational health and safety. Have you taken this to any safety professionals in terms of their ergonomic benefits you might be able to
I did a lot of research into ergonomics, and I was, looking at different angles and having this... have it, as ergonomic appropriate as I could, and this was the design that I felt was the best approach to tackle most of the issues that I saw.
And one small technical question: if you've got it in there, how do you stop the coffee grounds from actually being sucked down the tube and into the foot pump?
Because the foot pump's doing two movements. So the first movement is creating a vacuum, which is pulling all the coffee grounds out. And then they will clog up a little bit of a filter there, but because there's a second movement, which is also pushing air back out again, it's actually removing all the grounds that have caught in that filter. So within the 2 movements, there's no grounds left in the machine.
And what about, does it rely on the strength of the foot pedal, or could you have a more sort of compact design that, you know, maybe has a button on it that you press?
Well, there's lots of other approaches you can do. This was the simplest method, I thought, because essentially I want to keep everything as simple as possible, because the more simple it is, the less things are able to break and the more reliable it is. You could always have an electric pump or anything like that attached to make life even easier.
Less mechanical and more electrical.
And more expensive.
Okay. And I like the magnetic sort of seal that you've got on the bin there. But will that upscale? Like, you know, that bin looks pretty small for a busy cafe that might have 200 cups a day. How do you upscale the bin size?
It's definitely something I've thought about. This is just like an example of, but I wanted to have different sizes, or you don't even need to have this bin in place. You can just see any normal bin under it and the waste will drop straight into that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't just rely on having this. This is just here, you know, as an example, but you can have different sizes, or you can just sit a bin under it. It's not completely relying on this device. So.
Fantastic.
And how much is it going to cost?
I was looking about the $500 mark for this item.
How does that compare to the Noctube?
They're about $100 each.
Depends whose dad you get to make it.
But then, you know, you're not translating any of the damage into this. You know, you've got a better chance of creating more consistent, better coffee.
That's fantastic. So thank you so much, Thomas, for coming in.
Cheers.
Okay, now it's time for our judges to pick a winner. Is it Ian Scott's Oyster Shucker Holder, Trevor Watson's Easy Just Cafe Table, or Thomas Perzakowski's Caf Vac? Which was the idea, the originality of which caught your imagination, Alison?
Well, I thought the idea of the Caf Vac, you know, using vacuum technology for, you know, to solve that problem is pretty good, actually, pretty original.
Yeah,
and a nice design
out of the blue.
Yeah,
it is original. I thought the oyster shucker holder as well, just finding a better way of actually holding the oysters and
elegant
opening
simplicity, 3 points, spring.
In fact, all of the inventions are kind of creating something designed where before there was just dodgy sort of methods, whether it's being, you know, the knife and the glove or the coaster under the table.
And what they all show, particularly the oyster shucker, I think, is an ability to look at something that people have been doing for thousands of years in a totally different way, to actually think maybe there could be a better way.
For me, yes, the show's about food, but in fact, I think the show's really more about, you know, occupational health and safety, making things safer and making things more hygienic.
Yeah, all of them. Yeah, all of them with making things safer.
You're in the industry. Which one's going to sell?
The oyster shucker holder.
Is it?
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Look, the price, everybody's afraid of opening their own oysters, and everyone should open their own oysters. And so it's the thing that every household should have, and it's not going to be a burden to buy one.
Do you think the other two will sell?
I think they'll sell, but I just don't think they can compete with something that most households in Australia could use.
Do you agree with that, Jimmy?
I mean, it is interesting. I mean, unopened oysters are actually cheaper than opened oysters, even though they're fresher.
And better.
Yeah, so that is fascinating.
And they'll hold for 5 or 6 days.
So the oyster shucker holder is, you know, I think it will sell. I think the Caf Vac is very interesting because for a large coffee chain, if you want to look after your employees and want to stop RSI, that becomes very...
Personally, though, I think they've got a harder sell on their hands because I think the whole noise of cafes is how baristas express their arrogance. I mean, they bang on the thing, they've got the music going, they're yelling and screaming, they're flirting really loudly.
If it's a quiet cafe, you don't go.
Yeah, no, but I think... Well, that's right, it's got no buzz. No, but I think the upmarket restaurant where, you know, the bang's a bit of a...
Definitely.
You know, the posh restaurant, that's probably where...
That is where the Easy Just table comes in. Though.
Is that going to sell?
Well, the upmarket restaurant, definitely. You know, there's a little bit of a, let me just make sure that this is right and so on. I think.
Let me adjust your table, sir.
Yes.
Yes. You like to smell the table?
No, I don't think so, because seriously, I think that even in the dodgiest cafe, the coaster's under the table.
So you think everywhere?
That's so wrong. Yeah, that's so wrong. And also people bending down there. It's not a good look. And I think the key thing too with, you know, a good invention is obviously the pricing point. And I think with the Easy Just Cafe, the pricing point, you know, he's managed to do a really, really good job, Trevor, in keeping that base at, you know, around the same cost as a normal cafe base would be. Same with Ian and the oyster shucker holder. I do think the pricing point for the Caf Vac is probably a little high, $500, you know, compared to the kind of...
It depends on whether you're pricing at cost or at value. I mean, there potentially is $500 worth of value there.
Of savings. Yeah.
Okay then, well, who is your winner and why Alison, Paige and Baby?
Well, I think the Baby, what do you think? Yep, I think so too. I think the invention that's solving the most annoying problem of all, and that's the wobbly table and the spilt coffee. I'm going with the Easy Just.
Yes, do either of you two disagree?
I think I do.
You think you do?
You think you do?
I do. And the reason
No, you don't.
You're not allowed to do that. Because of the originality piece, and also because I actually just think it's a really nice design and beautiful design, I'm going to go with the CAFVAC.
The CAFVAC. So, guest judge, up to you, my friend.
Look, hard call, but I actually think the Easy Just for me.
Yes.
It's such an elegant solution that the diners and the staff can use. I think that's the selling point for me.
There you go. Then our winner is Trevor Watson and his Easy Just cafe table. Johnny Trevor, well done, mate. Congratulations. Congratulations. Trevor's in the running to be named our Inventor of the Year, and in fact join us next week for our grand final in which we'll reveal the inventions our judges have picked as the year's best. Trevor's might be one of them, and find out which of them will be named the new inventor's Invention of the Year. Thank you to our judges, especially guest judge Matthew Evans. Good work. And thank you to the real stars of the show, the inventors. Thank you, the three of you. See you on grand final night next week. Good night. Well done.